It started with the desire to put my finger on Americanness. I was looking at the work of photographer Robert Frank and realized my American perspective, because of how we have racialized identities, was inconceivable. So now it has become a journey. And as a gesture and a position today, I wish to speak from 4 racialized identities at once: Filipina, Pinay, Longing Balakbayan, Asian American, multiracial American, and American. And I would like to take you along this road. The Americans, a book of portraits taken between 1955 and 56, on Frank's first road tour of the United States, produced an iconic display of Americans as racialized black and white citizens, in which I or other bodies of color did not exist despite our presence. When I did, however, find a glimmer of my history in the book, it was at Chinese Cemetery, San Francisco. The only photograph of Asian America in the book. In this image, I see a hillside with Daly City fog hovering, stirring in me a collective memory of histories, of people degraded to a yellow peril, the American anxiety of Asia encroaching, and the Asian body inhabiting the American landscape. This fog is a metaphor. I see looming fog, like the fear of communism spreading to America's shore from Korea, Vietnam, and China after World War II. I see fog returning like the ongoing competition and relation between the US and Asia. It is inscrutable fog, for as soon as I start to perceive a direction in it, it disappears. Like the continual erasure of Asian American and other bodies of color from aesthetic Americanness. I look to the bottom of the image for refuge, only to find that the flowers on the grave are tipped over. I think about the history of Asian America unattended to. I think about ghostliness. I see in the dirt of the abandoned flowers the bodies of early Chinese immigrants who were beaten, harassed, and lynched at mines and railroads. The petals blowing across the grave barrier like their unheard whispers. Looking at this photograph was a psychic and corporeal heartbreak, a materially real mark of American racialization. It was historical grief, a fog that appears and passes as I move onward with more questions. I turn to My America, or Honk If You Love Buddha, a film by the Japanese-American activist and filmmaker Renee Tajima Peña. Filmed during the 1990s culture wars, she set out to represent her version of the American road trip, resulting in an 87-minute road memoir and documentary of America from an Asian American perspective. In the poster photograph for the film, we see a young Renee, taken by her family on their first road trip out of Chicago. We see her standing at a viewpoint wearing a plain white t-shirt and holding a white bread sandwich, reflecting American coding of the Asian American at home in the United States. Yet while this family memento delivers a portrait of being at home in America, it also stages the uncanny, as we notice that the poster image is a mirror image of the original, and that in both, the Statue of Liberty turns its back on her. For the Asian American viewer, this cues an unhomely moment, a collapse of the social and psychic, the remembering ourselves as forgotten and misread. For viewers who see these images and mistake Renee as belonging elsewhere, it may also be an unhomely moment of realizing America has belonged to its others. In this mirroring, the film is staged, when viewers begin to see the Asian American social paradox as both at home and estranged, their racialized identity without a given place in the American social. So, in one sense, My America, Tajima Peña's road trip, is about telling her own story in order to build a group history, to then show a more contemporary portrait. As she drives across the state, she locates a variety of intersectional identities. The Korean-American rappers Golden MC and Psycho Mike MC, Chinese-American debutantes, and Japanese-American activist and civil rights icon Yuri Kochiyama. In these portraits, Tajima Peña locates Asian American identity at intersections of race, class, and gender within a variety of ethnic and cultural orientations. But most of all, she prompts viewers to more questions than answers. In Seattle, Washington, we encounter the Korean-American brothers and rappers known as Golden MC and Psycho Mike MC. We see them after their performance with chopsticks eating with friends at an Asian restaurant, and we perhaps notice a difference in their Asianness, as their half-clipped overalls echo a popular TV show at the time. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the story of a young teenager played by Will Smith, whose Philadelphia upbringing clashes when he moves to his relative's neighborhood of Bel-Air. I wonder if these brothers have put their own spin on this to express their experience of social tension, finding a relational affinity through Black American pop culture. In the next scene, we see them at home. Michael Park tells the camera about an incidence of verbal racism from a white subject while at a burger joint. We notice his t-shirt printed with a famous photograph of Malcolm X armed at his home and his self-defense phrase, "by any means necessary." I wonder if these brothers will be welcomed or understood as belonging in these social spheres, knowing that the boundaries of race are often played out in cultural exchange between peers. For example, is the brother on the right with a Korean flag t-shirt more legible? In a completely different space, we find ourselves in Anaheim, California at a hybrid Chinese-American debutante ball, where the debutante curtsy is fused with a bow of the head. The daughter curtsy bows to her father instead of towards the audience. These cues of initiation in a hybrid manner mark the young woman's entry into social society and a move away from first-generation traditions into American culture. As we observe these portraits, we realize Asian American is anything but monolithic and more heterogeneous, open to complexities of class and gender in between Asian and American customs, and often a new blend. But seeing that Asian American is characterized well by diversity of differences between ethnic groups and individual expression, I wonder in what collective way can it benefit culture at large, in spite of the category's essentialism. The portrait of Yuri Kochiyama, an iconic Japanese-American civil rights activist, gives us a glimpse of its application in a shared political landscape. We see Yuri and her husband Bill in Mississippi, visiting the home of the Davises, the family that housed their son Billy and other freedom riders, civil rights activists who rode interstate buses into the segregated South. In this visit, we might remember Yuri's engagement with the Organization of Afro-American Unity and her early activism as a parent in Harlem. And we might also connect her experience of forced internment as a Japanese-American citizen during World War II as a collective story within Asian American and American histories. My America's engagement with Asian American history and American racialization was a revelation to me. At homes where things like our clock were in Chinese characters, only once in a while would we see my Filipina and Chinese families. And we never directly discussed race in America, although I could see the positive, negative, and creative effects of forced migration and assimilation over generations. But in the case of the Philippine Islands, the mark was different, more to do with its status as an American colony since the 19th century. So when I came upon Tajima Peña's portrait of Filipina Irish sisters in Louisiana, it got me thinking.
Benita!
I'm coming.
I pay a visit with the matriarchs of Louisiana's oldest Filipino clan. This is Benita and Audrey, and May and Joyce. And it's poker night in St. Bernard Parish.
Yes, just the four of us for a few minutes.
A few minutes, just the four of us, okay.
Yes, I'm gonna drink.
3 aces. That's it.
Do you consider yourself Southerners first or Filipinos first?
Oh, we're Southerners first. We're Americans first, Southerners second. We're Southerners. We're definitely Southerners.
Filipinos first.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't say that.
Now my grandmother's sister used to say, "That's my flag." My grandmother's, "That is not your country, the Philippines. This is your country."
What big wrong was this?
The Philippines is not your country? I suppose after 200 and some odd years in America, you do start to feel at home.
You caught my 5. I'll call it 7.
When I show this clip, people laugh, seeing Asians or Filipinos with Southern accents. Though yes, this is a surprise, it strikes no chords of humor in me. It is compelling how Benita states her lack of identification with anything Filipino, saying we're Southerners first, Americans second, and ignores from the other side of the table Filipinos third. And also compelling is how Tajima Peña speaks back to them in voiceover, questioning their perception of themselves. This strikes me as a critical dialogue to the complications of identity. For example, are these sisters passing in white society? They certainly are half Irish and shouldn't be denied that. But the loss of their Filipino identity becomes more complex in the following scene, where they recall their birth certificates said white, and their original ancestors were considered citizens of Spain. Understanding the forces shaping these sisters means conceptualizing hybridity, the condition of assimilation and practices marked by survival within unequal power and domination. I think about the 5 centuries of colonization in the archipelago, first by the Spanish and forms of indentured servitude, some escaped, and its American colonization afterwards, wondering how we begin to trace these cultures and its changes over time, all the way up to the complexity of a Filipino-American identity with neocolonial tensions. As a gesture and a position today, I hoped to speak from 4 racialized identities at once, to make a point about static oppositions in favor of becoming legible. There are many wounds from how race has mattered, but also new conceptions of Americanness. I am finding that race is often relational in production, and violence a recurrence of socio-historical misunderstanding or disinterest. For me, these things are not just about identity politics, but a needed reformation of social subjecthood, where each of us gives greater creativity to a new politics of the political. Thank you.